Hello, everyone. It's Friday, February 8th, 2019. My name is Bobby Johnson, and I'm coming to you live from Olympia, Washington, where we are anxiously awaiting Snowpocalypse 19 to start. You guys can probably make out the windows behind me. There's a little bit of snow on the ground, but sometime today it's supposed to dump about 8 inches on us, and the Pacific Northwest, at least a part of it that I live in, can't handle more than about an inch. So I may be locked in my house all weekend. Anyway, thanks for joining. I saw several people popped in to check out the stream as I went live. So thank you for joining me. CMJ Chris Jones, Lannon Burr. I'm gonna go with Lannon Bear there. I kind of like that, Lannon Bear. Yeah. Let's see. Looks like we also have Slow Cool with us to get started. So I'm happy you're here with me. Let me hop over to my board and let's kind of talk about what's going on this stream. So I've been working on an application that I call Broxburn. And kind of the way that I work on Broxburn is I create a project board for each of my streams that I do. And as I go through the streams, I record them and then repost them on YouTube. So the original getting started, setting up the project, that sort of thing, the board is right here. And if you guys want the repo for that, there's a link to the repo for you. And you just go into the projects tab up here and they're all in order, reverse chronological order. So the next project that I started working on was to set up continuous deployment with Zeit Now. And the first part of that, the link to it is right here. And let's see, we got kind of hung up. I tend to try to like to keep my streams at about an hour in length. And I fill the project board with what I think is about an hour's worth of work. But we got really hammered with Docker last week. Right at about the hour mark, I had some weird behavior in Docker. So I kind of dropped off real quick, and I can come over and show you what we were working on. And what we were doing is we were building a Docker image that contained both the backend API built in .NET Core using Web API, along with a front-end application built in React that was generated using the Create React app node module, and starting to build out a Docker file that would build that application and put it onto a image, and then we could fire up the container and actually view it. And I started with the side that was .NET, and we got the .NET build completely working, and it would stand up the application. And right at the end of the hour, when I was ready to start working on the node side, we had some weird behavior where I'd fire up the container that was built, and it was already serving up my React app, and it just blew me away. I had no idea why it was doing that. I mean, literally all I've done is built the .NET application, and then deployed it, built a container image with it, and then started up the .NET application. So I kind of ended the stream right there. Oh, wow. Okay. Thanks for letting me know about that. I will have to dig into my setup and figure out why I'm only coming through in one channel. That's really bizarre. Let me see if I can tweak that a little bit and get that done. Properties. Is it 2x2? Yeah. I'll have to play with it offline. Hopefully it's not too distracting to have me only in mono. Let me know if it is. I would appreciate that. Anyway, so we would stand up the application, just the .NET portion of the application, in a container, And when I would hit the endpoint, it was serving up the React app, and it really flummoxed me. I had no idea what was going on. And what I figured out was I had done a demo for the audience of the application running, and I left it running on my actual hardware, on my local machine. So when I fired up the Docker image, I wasn't paying attention to the ports that I was using, and I was hitting my local machine. I wasn't actually hitting the Docker image, which was really bizarre. Yeah, cool. Okay, so I kind of caught you up with like where we left it off last time. So we were working on this, creating a Docker image card, and I was trying to create an image from the build results and ensure that the image exposes a port, and that I'm using multi-stage build for both React and .NET Core. Moving on from there, then I'll go ahead and set up Zeit Now to do continuous deployment through GitHub, which is really cool. It's almost magical the way it works. So I want to share that with you guys. So I'm going to finish the rest of these tasks in the board. And if I get done with all of that, I have a little something special for myself at the end that I will break out, and I'll answer any questions you guys have. So why don't we'll jump right in, and let's see where we're at with this Docker build. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Docker images and see what I have currently. Wow, there's a lot of garbage in there. So I'm going to clean that up. So images, containers. What are all these? Oh, they're intermediate containers. Oh, that's pretty nasty. That's going to take me a little while to clean up. I don't want to waste your guys' time doing that. So I'll just go ahead and stand up this particular image, like create the Broxburn image, and show you it running. I'll go ahead and remove that. So I basically just told Docker to build an image named Broxburn image and to use this Docker file that I have right now. And what it's doing, if you didn't catch the previous one, it's pretty simple. I use the .NET SDK Alpine Docker image as a base to start on. I then install Node.js in there. Copy all my source files over, and I do have a Docker ignore file in here that ignores stuff that probably shouldn't be copied over. And then I just do a standard .NET build. I basically do a restore on the API directory to get any of my dependencies. I do a release build of that API directory, and then I publish the release build to an API directory, right? And then I take the ASP.NET Core runtime Alpine. So I'm using one image to do a build, and then I'm using another image to build a runtime Docker image. So this particular base image only has the .NET runtime necessary to run an ASP.NET Core application, right? So I start with that image. I basically say I'm going to be running a production build on port 80, and I'm going to copy from the build core image that I started with, and I'm going to copy the API directory into a .api directory. So once all those files are copied over, my API portions will be located from the root of the drive, like a /app/API. And then I tell Docker how to fire up the application. Basically just say, hey, call .NET and point it at this DLL. And this entire stack is running Linux, basically, right? So if you weren't aware of .NET Core being cross-platform, it most definitely is. And if you've never used C# as a language, you might want to check it out because it's a really, really nice language. So we should be able to go over here and look in Docker, and we see that we have the Broxburn image has been created successfully. And now if I go ahead and run that image, and this particular extension for Visual Studio Code that I'm using is pretty nice because it automatically wires up my ports for me. I don't have to remember what the syntax is for port wiring. So I should see that container running now. Boom, and there it is. You can see it running. And if I hop back over here to my browser, localhost 80 says it's not working, but pi values, I get my values, right? Because all I've deployed so far is the web API backend. I haven't done anything with the front end yet. So I don't really have an index or anything that's being served up over over localhost right now. That's the piece that I need to continue working on right now. So yeah, it looks like our image is where it needs to be. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and remove that container. I'm going to remove the image as well, and we're going to do some work about getting the React app pushed out there as well. So remove the image. So I already have Node installed on this base Alpine image. I just use APK to install Node.js, which is the Node executable, kind of like we have the SDK and then the runtime images, right? But with APK, I'm installing Node.js, but then also NPM to where we can do things like, you know, NPM install, that sort of thing. So what I need to do now is to build the React app. So let's give that a shot. So what is my structure? If I have all of this stuff copied over into my app directory, I want to run a npm install inside this directory. Oh, sorry, thank you. Is that better? Yeah, okay. So let's see. I wonder if I can just bump my work directory. Workdir to/app. Like that. Then I'm going to run npm install. Once that's done, I'm going to do a run npm build. And theoretically, that will put a build directory right in my work directory, so I should be able to just copy that. Copy what? From here to /app deploy client. I think that's what I want. All right. Let's try building that and see what we get. All right, it completed the .NET build. It's now doing the publish, Copying. I skipped it. Change worker to client. It's running the npm install. npm is throwing up some warnings about some old libraries. Apparently, I need to update. Yay, JavaScript. Well, it looks like the snow's completely stopped right now. Well, it's coming down really, really fine. So, yeah, glad I got all my errands done today. So we had a few new people join in that are watching. Apricot Droopfruit. Hello, how are you doing? Commander Root, nice to see you. Thanks for showing up. Zanky Burr, good to see you. I am in Olympia, Washington. Yeah, which is about 45 miles south of Seattle. Olympia is famous for Riot Girl Punk. So if you ever heard of Sleater Kinney or Bikini Kill, both of those bands came out of Olympia. And we're probably also famous for Kurt Cobain being the way Kurt Cobain is. The little known fact about Nirvana, like they started shows in Olympia before they moved up to Seattle and got all famous. So let's see. It looked like it completed very nice. I'm just going to go back and skim my output here and see if there are any crazy warnings that I'm concerned about. I might want to address those at some point in the future, but right now it doesn't look like it's causing any problems. Remove the intermediate container. Running a build. Call with no arguments. Ah. So I do need the run script. Let's see where to go from there. Tried to copy to deploy client. All right. I'm going to nuke that image and rebuild it. All right. Hopefully it won't, watching my output scroll by isn't boring you guys too much. Oh, nice. We're about in the UK. My wife and I took a UK vacation about 5 years ago. We spent what was it, like 7 days in London. We took the train down to Paris for a day, and then we went up to Edinburgh and did a bunch of tours of the Highlands and stuff like that. It was probably one of the best vacations I've ever had. I fell in love with Scotland, man. That place is beautiful. Oh, okay. Yeah, we did a tour of the Standing Stones. I cannot think of the name of what they're called. It's like the most famous old thing in the world, and I can't remember what it was called. Stonehenge. Yes, thank you, Chris Jones. What really blew me away about Stonehenge was I wasn't that impressed with the Standing Stones. Like once you actually go see them, it's kind of small. I mean, you might be amazed at like, oh wow, how did people so long ago move these giant rocks? But it was kind of small. But what was really cool was the land that it was on was perfectly flat, like grassland that you could see all the way to the horizon, like 360 degrees. It was just out in the middle of nowhere. It was really beautiful. Loch Ness was really impressive, though. We did a boat tour of Loch Ness, and that was pretty cool. Did not see any monsters, though. Yeah. Boy, that npm install has taken a while. I wonder if there's any way I could, like, cache that. It's got to be boring as hell for you guys to be watching npm installs going by. Yeah, Stonehenge is pretty cool. Loch Ness was very cool. One of the other things that I did, my wife wanted to go off to, I think it's called Harrods in London. It's like a really big store, like department store kind of thing. And I abhor shopping. So she took off to Harrods, and I got on a train and went out to Bletchley Park, which, if you're not familiar with Bletchley Park, it is where the first computers were ever made to break German encryption, right? So they have like a computer history museum and stuff there, and it's a really cool day trip. I really enjoyed it. All right, so let's see. Copy client. That seems like that did what we wanted. But what I didn't do is I didn't copy the client onto the actual run image. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this. And I want to say that I'm going to grab out of deploy and copy over to client here as well. So do you guys catch what I'm doing there? So on the first stage build, I basically install Node, I do the .NET build, I do the React build, copying the outputs to a deploy directory on my build image. And then from the build image, I copy those builds out into app/API and app/client, if that makes sense, right? So I'm going to nuke that again and fire it off. What was that? I just got a notification. Who was that? I need to turn my notifications off when I'm doing this stuff. Yeah. All right. So it's building again. Yeah. When I first started working with Node, we were using some CI system. I want to say it was Travis. And our builds were just taking forever. And Travis introduced this feature where you could cache certain directories between builds. And so what we were doing was we would cache the node modules directory unless we knew a module had changed, and then we'd blow it out. And our builds like went down to like 10% of what they were before. So that was pretty amusing. Yeah, definitely do Bletchley. If you're a computer nerd and like you've read like all of Alan Turing's work and that sort of thing, definitely go check that out. So are we everybody in the channel right now mostly non-US based, or am I getting the UK crowd, the early UK crowd? Ah. New York City or just New York State? Lannon Bear. New York State. Cool. So as you know, the little logo up here kind of indicates I work for Auth0, and before I started working for Auth0, I had never been east of the Mississippi. So my first trip to New York City was to go do, I want to say it was serverless conf in New York City. And I stayed in a hotel on Times Square. And I can honestly say that, yeah, that's too many people for me. That's too much. Oh, okay. Thank you, CMJ Chris Jones. All right. Okay. So the build completed there. Let's see if we can identify whether or not anything copied. Copy. Build core to the client. All right. And actually, I'm going to get rid of this statement right here because I don't need that. So let's check it out. Let's get in here and see. I'm going to run this image interactive. And what that's going to do is it's going to run it in a way that drops me into a prompt to where I can connect to it. Attach a shell. Boom. So I'm in my app directory on the actual running image. So you can see up here under containers, I have one actively executing image called Broxburn image. And I've connected to it with a bash terminal to where I can poke around and make sure all my files have been put in the place that I expect them to be. So in this app directory, I expect to see a API directory and a client directory. And I do. If I check in my API directory, I definitely have an API DLL along with some configuration files that may or may not be necessary. And inside my client directory, that looks like I have muffed that up pretty bad because you can see the Docker file is there, the README. So I must have copied files from my local system into that directory, which is absolutely not what I wanted. So let's see. I think what I need to do is just say copy from app client build. So basically everything that's in that build directory I want moved to app deploy client, and I think that will get me what I want. So let's go ahead and remove those and run the build again, and then we can pop in and check and make sure it's working the way we expect it to. All right. Oh, that's the wrong thing. There we go. And run that. I'm going to close some of these extra terminals I've created for no reason. There we go. Yeah, no snow yet. It's almost completely stopped. With the way the news was talking about it this morning, you would think we were like going to be in whiteout conditions, blizzard. Hey, Rambling Geek, thanks for joining us. Good to see you here, buddy. So this was kind of funny. While we're sitting here waiting for this image to build, let me pop over here to Twitter. And for the past couple days, I've actually been at Auth0's headquarters in Bellevue, Washington, doing some training. And I posted a tweet. It was fairly innocuous. Let's see, where's he at? Yeah, so I posted a tweet that basically I was learning about identity and security and kind of some in-depth topics directly from Vittorio. And Vittorio's kind of a well-respected person in the security space. He worked at Microsoft for 15 years on Active Directory, and he's one of our principal architects at Auth0. So I was like, yeah, man, I'm learning directly from Vittorio. And the Hugo Dahl popped in and said that I look like Stephen Root, and I did not recognize that name. So I Googled it, and Stephen Root is the guy that played Mort, right? So I was like, really? Seriously? But he was thinking that, not necessarily looking like Mort so much as the actor that plays him. So this is the image. He thinks I look like this guy based on that image right there. I'm not sure what you guys think. I don't know. I think I'm a better looking guy than that, but whatever. Let's see. And once again, I was talking all through that browser stuff, and I wasn't showing it to you. Isn't that awesome? Here, let me pop it back over here to where you guys can actually see it. So, yeah, here's the image of me and Vittorio, and Hugo popping in saying I look like Stephen Root. And when I Googled him, this was like one of the first images I came up with. Although that's an awesome movie, so I guess I can't be that excited, that offended. This image, though, is more what he says. What do you guys say? You guys can see my face? Do I look like this guy? I don't know. Maybe a little bit. So I'll go ahead and back out of that, pop back over here to the editor. Okay, so copy failed. Docker temp build, app client build, no such file or directory. So that is attempting, so I changed it to client. I am once again messing up. So let's save that. So I already set my work directory to the client directory. So really all I need to do is copy the contents of the build directory over here into my client. So, oh, it even failed to create the image at all because it failed. So let's run it again. Yeah, do you think? All right. Maybe he's a heavy whiskey drinker too. Let's see, it's getting kind of dark in my room. Give me just a second to turn on a light. I'll be right back. I'm back, just waiting for this image build to complete. So while we're waiting for the build to complete, I could answer any questions or anything. Is anybody curious about what the Docker file's doing? What my goals are here? Can I answer any questions about what I'm doing? It was almost 2 minutes. I gotta find some way to speed that up. All right, so the copy is failing again. Temp Docker builder / build no such directory. And the container or image didn't get created, so I can't verify that. So let's see, where am I at? I'm getting all the way to here, right? And when I do the npm run, oh, I am trying to copy from my local. I wonder if there's a move command that I can use. Let's look that up real quick. No, that is definitely not what I want. Docker file move file inside container. That's what I want. So another. That's not really what I want. But I don't really need to copy that. I know that it is inside an app client build directory. So what I could do is from down here, I could say app client build, just do the copy from there. There's really no sense in just shifting the bits around on the build image. That might just simplify things a little bit. Let's give that a go. Oh, thank you, Chris. Let me check that out. We're here on the browser. Might have to look at that a little later. I want to get through the things that we're currently working on, though. Sorry, that's why I use my project style here, where it kind of keeps me focused on the things at hand. What I might do is in a future episode, put a card in there to investigate the thing this blog is pointing out and see if it'll speed up my builds. So that would be a future episode. So while that's building, for you new folks that aren't familiar with the project, I can kind of walk through what we have. Basically in this repository, pop that stuff out for you. We've got an API directory, which is a .NET Core web API project, which is basically backend only. It's only going to be serving up JSON. I don't really intend it to be serving up any kind of HTML at all. And really the whole meat of this is the startup class here that basically configures my middleware pipeline right here to use some specific features. And then a single controller in the back end called values controller that just serves up some dummy data to where I can verify that it's working the way I expect it to. That's kind of the meat of that. Basically, that entire structure, the entire API directory is from the .NET template. So you'd run something like .NET new web API, right? And it creates all the files you see in there, except for this editor config. I threw in an editor config into both API directories and my client directories, but I have a master editor config in the root that kind of sets my defaults across the entire project. But if I have any specific overrides that I want to do for Visual Studio files, like .NET files, I can do that right there. And the same for my React JavaScript files. If I want some custom setting, I can drop those into my editor config. All right, so it's successfully built. That's a step forward. Let's try running it interactive, and we'll poke around inside what was actually put into that image. Attach a shell. Can you guys see the fonts and everything okay? Oh yeah, there it is. Nice. You know, in my display here, let me bring up the camera to where you guys can actually see what he's talking about. In my feedback monitor, where I can see the video that I'm putting out to you guys, my windows look weird. They look kind of staticky almost, and I wasn't sure you guys could see out behind me. Cool. Thanks, Lan and Bear. I was hoping that my fonts were good enough, so at least big enough to read. I know that's my first complaint anytime I start watching a developer stream, is like, I cannot see anything that is going on your screen, man. So let's see. Okay, we have our API directory. We have our client directory. We can verify API looks the way we expect it to. The client directory now looks the way we expect it to, right? We have the index.html file there. And a giant JavaScript file along with some static resources. That's exactly the structure that I wanted on this image. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that. And when I started it, I do believe it is listening on port 80. So let's hop over to the browser and see what is going on. If we can see both our API and our React app. So localhost API values, and that is working as expected. And I should be able to go to just the root of localhost and get back my React app. And I am not getting that. And I believe I may know the reason for that. So let me pop back over here to the editor. I'll leave the Docker file there for a while. I'm going to kill this image or running container. Yeah, so the end goal of the project, I haven't really decided yet what I want Broxburn to do. But I know I want to build an application that uses Web API as the back end and React as a front end. and that I want to deploy that into Docker on Zeit Now, right? And so I can start working on those things while I figure out an idea of what I want the application to do. And since I started Broxburn, which has been a couple weeks, because I only work on the code live on stream, I came up with a couple ideas. And one of the ideas that I was thinking of is I could build my own overlay system. And instead of just running it on localhost, I can have it running out on Zeit and also add authentication mechanism. So anybody that wants to use my overlay application to build their own, they could just go to my published website for Broxburn and use it. So that's kind of as far as I've gotten for what I want the app to do, right? Is I know that maybe I want an overlay route that I can actually plug into OBS and display images and that sort of thing, and have some kind of maybe WebSocket IO sort of feedback where I can be in the app, click a button, or even click something on my Stream Deck and have it pop up and be in complete control of it. So almost like a Stream Elements clone, but maybe with some tooling that I want, that I built completely by myself. So I think that's an interesting idea. But before I get there, I want to get a complete continuous delivery deployment out into Zeit's environment. So if we look at the output here, we can see that I did a request to localhost and the .NET Core Kestrel server through an error, basically that there's nothing there to serve, right? So if I go into my API directory and choose my startup project, you can see down here in my configure method that I've told it to use SPA, and that my source path is the client directory. This is like on my local machine. And if I'm in developer mode, like I'm running in debug mode basically, then go ahead and kick off the React process by calling npm start. But that is all about local development, right? That's not about actually deploying the application out somewhere. What I need to do is up here in my configure services, I need to tell the SPA services, when running in release mode, where is my SPA root, basically, right? So to do that, I need to add the static files, SPA static files. So services, SPA static files, and that takes a delegate. So config like that. And then where is it going to be? It's going to be config root path equals, and it should be relative to this path. So backup one and then client. I think that will get me what I want. So basically I'm saying, okay, add these static files located in a sibling directory of the current directory named client. Does that make sense? All right, cool. Let's see if that works for me. There we go. And for some reason, the Docker extension keeps spawning bash terminals for me. So thanks. All right. Nice. I'm using a Razer Black Widow mechanical keyboard. I really like it. I kind of like it that it sounds like I'm punching a bucket of chiclets when I'm typing. I really enjoy that. But people who are on video meetings with me sometimes don't care for it. But hey, you know I'm furiously typing, so that's cool. If you are interested in what my streaming setup is, you can find a full listing right there. Right, that's literally everything that's sitting on my desk, and including the software that I use. Yeah, I don't know why. I've been that way forever. Like my first computer was a IBM PS433 SX33. It was a 486, and it came with those old like uh, crazy IBM keyboards that were very very clicky. And so anytime I get a like a non-mechanical keyboard, it just feels like the keys are mushy, and I hate that feeling. So I'm mechanical all the way. I haven't gone down the path of actually building my own keyboards yet. That sounds like an expensive hobby, so I'm trying to avoid it. I haven't gone down that road yet. Let's see, is there anything else to talk about in the project to catch folks up? We talked about the web API and how that is wired up. Uh, the React app is nothing special to write home about. It is just like the API is the stock template directly out of the CLI. This is directly out of the Create React app CLI. I haven't really changed anything yet. I want to get them deploying all the way through to a production environment, and then start making changes right as I go. So once I'm done with this particular project, the next project might be, okay, let's do some simple styling, maybe add Bootstrap, something like that, and get a basic layout going. From there, I'll probably move on to authentication, right? And wire in auth0 for authentication, and create some test harnesses in the application itself that allows the front end to communicate with the back end and verify that my authentication flows all the way through, that sort of thing, right? So let's see. Okay, our image completed the build. Let's go ahead and run it. And I'm choosing to run interactive because it spits out all the console messages from the process running inside of Docker to my terminal. So, okay, we're running on port 80. Head back over to the browser. And no, it's not running. Why is it not running? So let's see. The SPA default page middleware could not return the default page index.html because it was not found, and no other middleware handled the request. So make sure it has been published, or that you have built your SPA manually, which I have. You may wish to switch to your development environment, which is not what I want. Hey, Brave Cobra, good to see you. So you may be able to see behind me, Brave Cobra, but it has started to blizzard here in Olympia, Washington. The snow is coming down pretty heavily. We're forecasted to get anywhere between 3 and 8 inches of snow overnight. I was kind of starting to think it wasn't going to happen, but it looks like it is going to happen now. So, back over to the editor. So, the setting that I use does not seem to have resolved the problem. So let's go back to my startup class. So I set my config root path to client. Client. I wonder if root path will not accept a relative path like that. I'm going to look that up real quick. So back over to the browser. Let's look up .NET Core SPA services root path. Just take me to the documentation. Let's see. Use static files. That's not what I want. Well, you know, I could test that theory. We know what the path is on the Docker image is going to be, what is it? App client. So why don't I just put that whole path in there and see what happens? All right, back out here. Let's destroy that image. Bam, and let's run it again. Is that the build? No. Right here. All right. There we go. Yeah, we had a bad windstorm a couple weeks ago. Knocked down a section of my fence. Yeah. That's usually what you get here in the Pacific Northwest. Like the area that I live in is kind of known for rain, but the really bad storms are usually windstorms. We get snowstorms maybe once a year, and that's about it. Yeah, Lennon Bear. Custom mechanical keyboards do sound very expensive. I play guitar sporadically, and that is also a very expensive hobby that I have. So I'm trying to avoid taking on another expensive hobby. While that's building, I'm going to go ahead and come back to the browser and keep looking for the documentation for, what is it? SPA services static files. Let's try Googling that. No, I did not mean that. Docs, SPA services. There we go. SPA services I'm looking for. Where are your docs at, man? Come on. This is one of the complaints I have with Microsoft. Sometimes it's really hard to just go to their docs. Unless you already have found it and bookmarked it. Which I should have had this stuff bookmarked. So let's see what ASP.NET Core. All right, fine. Where is API? Architecture. Docs. Thank you. .NET Core. Web. I do not want tutorials. .NET Core API reference. Search for SPA services. Not there. All right. Are we done building? Nope, still going. Keep poking around. Nothing about SPA services on the front page. .NET. Probably ASP.NET. There's core. I don't want tutorials. I don't want an introduction. I want an API reference. Yeah, that was the page that I was just on. When was it added? Maybe there? Let's see. Nothing for SPA there. Oh, it could be under MVC. Maybe? Let's give that a try. Nothing. Let's see. Ah, we're done. Okay, so let's try starting up this image and see what it does. If anybody can find the actual API documentation for SPA services and put it in chat, I will be happy with you. I don't have anything to give away. I'm not like C# Fritz. I can't give you a Stream Deck or anything. Okay, so that's running. Let's head over to the browser and see if it's serving anything up. Well, that looks positive. It's trying to serve something up. So let's check it out. All right, sending file, requested path, index HTML, physical path is this. So what am I actually getting in my browser? Inspect. Oh, we have some errors. Unexpected token. Where? This is supposed to be a JavaScript file? Yeah, it's a JavaScript file. But it's being served up as if it was HTML. That's kind of bizarre. Type is again. Huh. That is interesting. So what all am I getting here? I'm getting some images. That's nothing related to that. 2 script files and from localhost. Like favicon, static CSS, chunk CSS. Am I getting that? Let's see, resource interpreted as a style sheet but transferred with MIME type text HTML, even though it's a CSS. That's interesting. Let's try Googling that. Well, let's check the actual headers that are coming out and see what it's given me. So, what is it, -I? Yeah. Well, the root would be text HTML, so that's expected. Back over to the browser. where is it? Right here. Let's try this URL. And it is being served up as text HTML. And it is Kestrel that's serving it up. Why is it doing that? That is really tarded. So that's CSS. Let's try Googling that specific problem. So Kestrel, CSS, type, text, HTML. Do I have the base set in my HTML? What do you mean, Brave Cobra? This is kind of implying that there's something wrong with my markup. So let's see what it actually produces here. So if I come local and look in my client directory, when I do a build, I get an index.html file. That's expected. And I should have, what is it? Yeah, none of that matters. I think it's going to be in the static. Here's my JavaScript. There's some chunky chunk. And there is not HTML in there. And in my CSS, there's not HTML in there. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Chris Jones, but really at this point, all I should have to do is, because the files are already built, they're just static files. It should serve them up, right? So if I go and look in my startup directory, I'm basically saying, hey, add these SPA static files. The root path is app client, and it is serving them up. I wonder if there's something I need to set up in my configure as well, because down here, I'm saying to use SPA services, and that my source path is appear to client, and if it's running in debug or development as the environment, to basically fire up the React server. But I'm not saying if I'm not development, do something else, right? I wonder if there's something else I need to set for this use SPA. I do think I have a way to figure that out. Let's give this a try. So let's fire up another terminal. All right, cd foo. I'm going to say .NET new H, or just new. Show me all my templates. So this is good. You guys will get to see how I created the application. So where's it at? React, ASP.NET Core, React with Angular right there. So it is just React. So I'm going to say .NET new React right there. Oh, no switch. What is it? .NET new options. I don't think I need the dot. All right, so let's look at the startup CS. So app, use SPA, we set the source path, and if it is development, use the React development server. That's exactly what I have. I'm I'm not using MVC currently, so I don't need that. Ah, look at that. App use spa static files. I wonder if I have that. Editor. Let's go look at startup. I do not. I do not have that one. So back to the terminal. What is it I need? Use static files. Use HTTP redirection. Use MVC. Let's grab both of those. I also want to check the configure that I'm not missing anything from configure as well. No, looks the same. Everything else looks pretty straightforward. So I believe I need to add that after the HTTPS redirection. So what am I doing? Oh wait, I'm not showing you guys my editor. So use static files. Use spa static files. All right. And I'm not really using MVC. I'm not going to mess with that right now because I want to solve this problem first. Yeah, that's what it looked like. It's kind of weird that it was serving the files up, but not, it was like munging the CSS and the JavaScript files, which really confused me. I'm not sure why it would do that. Let's see, do I still have a container running? I do not. So we'll nuke that image and get it fired up again. So let's see, let's get out of there. Let's try running that build again. Yeah, Chris Jones, that's what I want, is for the image that I'm building to be a production version of the application, right? So I'm not running any of the debug stuff or development stuff. Yeah, I wonder, that's interesting, Brave Cobra. I wonder if I need to invert this a little bit to where that I check for if we're running in development mode, then use SPA and set all these settings. But this is exactly the way it's set up from the default template. And for you guys that didn't see the previous streams, the reason I didn't use the default template is that I wanted my project set up exactly this way, where I have my root directory, there's an API directory with my backend API, and a client directory with my front end code. And the default template, if you go back over here to terminal and take a look at this, it puts the React app inside the directory with the web API app, and that just feels dirty to me. So of course I had to be difficult and split it up and figure out by hand how to change it. Yeah, that's kind of what I was just doing, right? I was looking at what is this doing differently than what I'm doing. In the use static files and use SPA static files, I was missing. And I think that will take care of it. At least we're going to test it and see. All right, so back over here to my editor. Yeah, once we get this image built and executing the way that I want it to, actually getting Zeit to deploy it. It should be simple. It should take less than 20 minutes. And you guys can write that down and mock me later when it takes 45 minutes or an hour or 3 hours to do it. So. All right. What's nice though is that we have figured out quite a bit. We've got the React build, building, and deploying in the location that we wanted to deploy. It's now we're more just like fiddling with how to serve it up. And right now I'm actually serving it up in a single container, just kind of leaning on SPA services in ASP.NET Core. But at some point in the future, I might want to split those out where I have my back end running in a dedicated container and my front end running in its own dedicated container behind something like Nginx or something like that. Yeah, Brave Cobra, thank you for the reminder. I did check configure services. They're identical between the two. Okay, so it completed the build. Let's fire it up and see how it behaves. All right, what's this warn? Data protection. Okay, that's about secrets. I'm not doing anything with secrets right now, so that shouldn't matter. Let's hop back over to the terminal. Cross your fingers, everybody. Hey, we have a React app. Look at that. That is the out-of-the-box create React app template. And just to verify, let's make sure the API works the way we expect it to as well. And it does. So we are now deploying this application in a release mode into a Docker image that we can spawn instances, containers to our heart's content. Wow, yeah. I'm so excited about that. So let's go back and let's do some cleanup and figure out what all we have changed in here. I'm going to go ahead and kill that container. And remove the image. Let's see, where am I at? Here we go. Exit. So, git status. Here are all the files that I've modified. I had to modify the API startup. Was there anything else that was necessary to edit? The Docker file. So basically, we changed some settings inside the startup CS, and we completed the Docker file itself. All this other stuff was files that I left sitting there from the last session, basically, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit the changes to the API. So add API startup. Let's see, what are some of these other things that I'm going to clean out all of these editor configs, just commit them as one. So add dot editor config API dot editor config editor config. All right, so that's good. What do we have left? All right. So we have a workspace. That's a Visual Studio thing. So I'm going to go ahead and add that one. I don't want to push the changes yet. All right, what else do we have left? Looks like we modified the yarn lock file. Is that really something I want to be committing into my repo? Let me think about that. Yarn lock, what's in there? Yeah, that's probably a good idea. That way I'm sure I'm always getting the same version of my node modules. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that as well. All right, so last couple files we have are related to the Docker file that we built. And we have something, Git Attributes, that I added off camera. So I want to explain to you guys why I did that and what it is. So let me commit the Docker changes. All right, so let's take a look at this Git Attributes file real fast. A lot of people aren't aware of Git Attributes, but basically you can drop this into the root of your Git repository, and it give hints to Git on how it should handle certain file types. And because this is a .NET Core application, and there's a potential of it to go onto a Windows environment, you know, for some local development, maybe OS 10 for some local development. I want to ensure that no one's going to submit a pull request to me that changes all the line endings in all my files, right? So the very first thing that I set in my Git Attributes is to auto set what is appropriate for the host operating system. So when you do a git clone and Git sees this file and you happen to be on Windows, it's going to allow all of your line endings to be, CRLF? But if you clone it on a Unixy system, it's going to allow it to be LF, right? But when you do a commit and you push it up to GitHub, it's going to undo that change to where they stay consistent across the entire repository. And then I don't have to worry about people submitting pull requests with a bunch of white space changes that could potentially break the code. Could potentially break a build when someone from Windows changes the line endings and I try to build it in Alpine, right? So if you have a Git Attributes with just that line, it's worth having Git Attributes in your repository. The next thing is I can go through and do some specific document types and give hints to Git on how it should do its merging. So, you know, markdown files are text. You know, you're going to use a standard text merge on those. But I can declare that things like PNGs or binaries, it won't even try to do a merge on a binary file, right? It will just completely replace it. So it saves Git some headache of trying to show you differences in image files or binary files. Let's see, but one really cool feature is I can say that all CS files diff them as C#. So Git will know about language features and that sort of thing. So it will try to line up your ending brackets and that sort of thing for you. And you can see I went through basically creating all of these. I did not do this by hand. So let's pop over to the browser and I'll show you how I generated this. Git Attributes IO. So you can go to gitattributes.io. You can select like your project style. So I know there's going to be C# in this project. I want my common settings as well. That's the, text equals auto. That's where I'm going to get that from. And then I also know that I'm going to have a lot of webby stuff in there as well. Let's go ahead and generate that for me. Copy that, drop it into the root of your directory, and not have white space issues, and actually have decent merging with Git. So that's pretty handy. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that one. And I'm going to push that all up to the repository. So, very nice. I like that. So let's go back to the browser and let's take a look at our project and close a lot of tabs. Keep localhost open, I guess. I want to read that later. That's garbage. So let's see. We have successfully created an image from the build results. The image does expose a port appropriately. We are using multi-stage build for both React and .NET Core. I think that card is done. And the next card to do is to set up our continuous deployment using Zeit. And if you're not familiar with Zeit, let me show you something real quick. Yeah, we're in the browser. Their website is zeit.co, and what we're planning on using is this Now project, which is global serverless deployments. And if you take a look at this animated GIF, it kind of shows you the magic of Zeit. So in this directory, the guy has an API folder, an index.html, a dashboard.html, and inside the API, he has an orders JavaScript file, which is a node application basically. And all he does is in the root of that directory call now. And what it does is it inspects the files that are inside the directory and deploys them out and gives you a URL that you can hit and view that application. What's kind of nice about this is that it automatically wires up HTTPS for you, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And it's a very simple deployment mechanism. I use it quite a bit in my day job for demos. Like I want to deploy something really quickly and have an audience like go hit it and interact with it. Like say I'm building a little app that uses Twilio to call out to people's phones. So I can deploy a quick demo application, have them all go hit the app and enter their cell phone numbers and get a text message back or something like that from the app. It's really handy for demos. But one of the killer features of Zeit is that they allow you to take a Docker file, a source repository that contains a Docker file, and use that as your unit of deployment. So it'll inspect the Docker file, it'll do your image build, it will deploy that image to their internal Docker hub of images, and then actually stand it up for you. And it's literally just by calling now. But I don't want to run that locally every time I want to deploy. I want continuous deployment. So to get that, Zeit has a GitHub application called Now that if you go to zeit.co/GitHub, you can click Setup Now, which I've already done this, so I don't want to go through it again. But basically what it'll do is it'll kick you over to GitHub to get a consent to install this application in your repositories. And from then on, all of your repositories will be monitored, all of your pull requests, all of your commits to master. And as long as it has this magic file in the root of the directory, it will automatically deploy those things, right? So let me show you kind of how that works. So to get started, we're going to come over here to the editor. And what now is going to be looking for inside my project is a now.json file. So now.json, right? And that is JSON. And to get the Docker deployment container stuff that I was talking about earlier, you have to use version 1 of their deployment pipeline. So the first thing you want to do is set your version. I want to say it's just like that. Let me double check and make sure. Yeah, I don't need quotes around my 1. So version 1. Just like that. And then I can also kind of control the dynamic URL that it creates for me. I can kind of create what Zeit considers a project by giving this a name. And I'm going to call it Broxburn. Right, and then the final thing that I'm going to put in here is an alias, and I'll explain what that is once the magic happens. And that's going to be Broxburn as well. All right, so I don't want to commit this directly on master because I want to show you kind of how amazing this is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a branch. I'm going to commit this to the branch, and then I'm going to create a pull request against master. All right, so status. So all I'm adding is my now.json. And it put that in the client directory. I don't want that in the client directory. All right, come back down here. Yes, move it. Yeah, so it needs to be in the root of your source control repository. All right. All right. And I need to map my upstream. Bam. Okay, so now if we go back to the browser and I go into code, I'm going to create my pull request. And if you notice down here, we now have a pending check. The now bot has recognized that this branch has a now.json file in it. And because I created a pull request, it is deploying that pull request to now automatically. Right, so if I look at the details of that, it's going to kick me out to Zeit. And I can actually watch the build as it runs. And we should see exactly what we saw locally. Anybody have any questions about that? Did I go through it too fast? Yeah, Netlify is pretty awesome, Lan and Bear. I just happen to kind of really love Zeit for the ease of use. The Docker file thing is kind of a killer feature for me. What is kind of a downside of that is the version 2 of Now and its deployment pipeline. They've migrated everything over to serverless, basically running in AWS Lambda. And they've kind of deprecated the Docker file support like version 1 had. And if you go look in their support forums and that sort of thing, there are a lot of people that aren't happy with that. I'm kind of hoping they'll change their mind at some point. being able to deploy serverless applications really easily is cool. And I definitely want to do that when I'm building serverless applications. Hey, Rambling Geek, have a good night, man. I didn't realize you were in the UK. You missed the whole UK conversation we had at the beginning. I'll have to tell it another time. Have a good night, man. So let's see. Okay, so the image was successfully created. And as you can see right here, it's deploying it to Zeit's internal registry, right? And then it's going to deploy it. And it says that we're ready. So if I click that link, we should see my application spin up in a minute or two. And you notice that the randomly generated name is now prefixed with Broxburn. That's because I put the name in my now.json. It basically, any deployment for that particular repository will always start with Broxburn. And there we have it. We have our React app being served up right there. And I should be able to get API values. Okay, so I think that pull request is good. It seems to be doing what I want it to. That's awesome. So I'm going to go back and accept that pull request. So merge it. And here's where the magic comes in. I just merge that into master, right? And if I come and look at my commits, you can see I have a little yellow dot. If I click that, now has already kicked in for master and has started to deploy the master out to their infrastructure. So if I go look at the details of that, we can watch the build one more time. How many times have we watched the Docker build? I think we're up in the like 20 range, right? All right, so it's cranking along. What else do we have going on? You guys aren't chatting with me. Come on, talk to me. I'd play music, but all the music I want to play would get my stream muted. I don't want to be muted. Yeah, pretty cool. Connection error. Get out of here. Yeah, I would have a connection error on NPM, waiting on NPM as well. All right. Build is just about complete. Bam, bam, bam. All right, it's deploying to the internal registry. All right, it's firing it up. It's listening. Started on port 80. And you notice the hosting environment has been set to production. Is it going to show me? No, not yet. Come on. I'm going to go back to GitHub and see what the output looks like there. So here's a commit. Deployment has completed. Details. back. It's not commenting for me. Oh, there it is. Okay, so the build completed. It deployed to the temporary domain, right? The CNAME. But because this is master, and I added the alias line in my now.json, it also aliased a domain that I have registered with Zeit, and pointed master, the build output of master, at that alias. So basically, I have a complete continuous deployment environment, including test deployments for my pull requests. So that if you guys submit, pull requests to me, I can go poke around, make sure you haven't broken my app at all, and then merge it into master, and it updates the live application, right? So once I get authentication baked in, you guys can authenticate to this application and use it, whatever the application is going to be doing, just like any web application out there on the internet, right? So let's head back and take a look at my project and see how much we have left to do. Ensure the deploy works locally. I didn't really do that. Basically what I would do there is just go into the root of my GitHub repository and run now. And it would deploy just like it did through GitHub. I don't want to force you guys to watch me go through that again, so I'm not going to do it. I already had the bot added, so I didn't need to mess with that. It does pick up PRs and deploy them, which is very nice. That commits and merge PRs to master deploy. It does, and the alias works as well. I'm not sure why I'm throwing errors there. So we are done with that card. That. And the final step here is to answer any questions you guys might have. But before we get to that, I want to break out a little celebration because I completed this project and it took me 3 episodes to do. So I'm going to put you guys on hold for a second while I go get a beverage.
What do you desire? What makes you itch? What sort of a situation would you like? I do this often in vocational guidance of students. They come to me and say, well, we're getting out of college and we haven't the faintest idea what we want to do. So I always ask the question, what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life?
All right, I'm back. Hopefully you enjoyed the scenery of Olympia, Washington, and kind of understand why I live here. Brave Cobra, you are welcome to ask me any question you like. It can be about the project. It can be about my haircut. It can be about my dog, Louie. It can be about Olympia. But while you guys are asking me those questions, my wife bought me a gift today of Johnny Walker, which is Scotch whiskey. And something personal about me, I am a huge A Song of Ice and Fire fan. So she got me the Game of Thrones branded Johnny Walker. Isn't that awesome? It's kind of cool. It says on the side that if you put the bottle in the freezer, something magical will happen. And what happens is the ink on the label reacts to the cold, and a message on the side shows up that says that winter is here. Isn't that kind of cool? What is the origins of the Not Myself brand? That is a great question. So compared to all the other streamers that I watch, I am an incredibly old fart. I've been working on web applications and websites and HTML and that sort of thing since the original .com bubble back in the late 90s. And when I first started playing video games online, I was very obsessed with Quake and a game called Headhunters, which was a mod for Quake that would allow you to, when you killed an opponent, it was basically death match. But when you killed your opponent, their head would pop off, and you could pick it up and carry it around. And you would collect them. The more you collected, you could go to like a goal and cash the heads in for points. So instead of, frag count, what you got was, how brave were you to carry around as many heads as possible and score at the goal. And any of your other opponents could kill you and steal the heads from you. It was an insanely fun game. And at that time, I used a nickname in gaming of Straight Dog. I was in my 20s. I was really lame. But I was also very heavily into IRC. And we got the creator of Headhunters to come join our IRC channel once. And he never had used IRC, so he used the handle in IRC of Not Myself, and I knew that it would never be used again, and I thought it was hilarious. So I grabbed it and started using Not Myself instead of Straight Dog, which was really lame. And I've been using it ever since. You can go to my my website. Let me pop a link to that for you. There are all my things. In the I Am Not Myself website, you can see I've got content there that I've been blogging on and off for like the last 10 years. So I'm kind of known as Not Myself on most social networks. Twitter. When I had a Facebook, I deleted my Facebook last year. I didn't want it anymore. Unfortunately, there's a newbie account on Twitch that took the Not Myself username, and I can't get Twitch to give it to me, which is really lame. I really want it. So I'm hoping if I can get popular enough or get up to affiliate or something like that, either they'll recycle the name or I can talk somebody into giving it to me. Yeah. Does that make sense? And by the way, this Johnny Walker is great. And when I said that I am a Song of Ice and Fire fan, I'm dead serious about that. Let me grab my camera and kind of show you my shrine. Let's see. Can you guys see that over there? So I've got a hound helmet. I've got a bunch of pop figures. I have a crown, a Robert Baratheon crown that my wife made for me for Halloween one year that I wore. And on the bottom shelf down there are first editions of all of the released novels right now. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that series. Yeah, it's all my geek junk that I've been collecting for years. That's a good question. I dust the front of it. There's probably like snowdrifts up there at this point. So yeah. What other questions you guys have for me? Let's see. Brave Cobra, you mentioned Auth0 specifically, so I should probably read that. You're about to start using Auth0 for your projects, but the authorization part is lacking for use. So we would writing that in our own server that we like to call from the rules. Is that a good approach? What specifically about the authorization part do you feel is lacking? Can you like describe that to me? And while you're typing that, I will bring up some documentation that might interest you. Let me hop over here to my browser. And Auth0. So Auth0 is where I work. I'm a dev evangelist there. So I go to a lot of meetups and conferences and speak on security and identity. Let me log in real quick. And let's see, what app am I in? I'm going to go to my personal tenant. And down here in extensions, Auth0 authorization. Is this what you're referring to, Brave Cobra? You're working with this and it's not working for you? Is that it? Or have you not seen this yet? So this is an extension to the base Auth0 offering that adds an authorization layer on top of it. Well, rules can definitely do that, right? During the authentication flow, I believe, you have an opportunity to add any information you want to the token about the user. So maybe you could shoot me a message on Twitter or something like that about your specific use case, and I can dig into it and figure out if I can give you a hand. So anyway, yeah, that's my workplace. It's a really cool place to work. We're up to like 400 and something employees, but they have very much a remote culture. So when I'm not traveling to go to conferences or meetups, I get to work from home. So this office is where I'm at all day long, most of the time. So yeah, it's kind of nice. Go back to the camera here. Any other questions? All right, so I think we're going on about 2 hours, and I just got started on the Johnny Walker, so I should probably get offline. In the next stream that I do, which is scheduled, I believe, for Monday. Let me double check. I'm going to go ahead and check off. I answered your questions. If you still have questions, I'll keep answering, whatever. The next stream, let me go check my Twitch account. And here, go back to the browser. Dashboard, my events. Yeah, so the next one is, I believe, Monday at 4 o'clock. And right now it says we're going to complete the Zeit deployment. We did that. So I'm probably going to update this a little bit. And the next thing I want to tackle is getting some kind of UI framework in there. You know, I hate to go to Bootstrap, but Bootstrap's a really easy one to use, and I don't want to waste too much time learning a new UI framework. I'd kind of want to get to actually building functionality. So what we'll do is we'll key in Bootstrap and get it deploying and build like a really simple layout that we can start with, and then start building features on top of that, which will be a future screencast. Something else that I've been thinking about doing right now, I'm doing this Broxburn series, which is build an application from the ground up, right? I've been thinking about doing a couple other series, and I'd really like to get some input on these things, if you guys don't mind giving me some. One of them is I would like to do an Auth0 series where I talk about adding authentication to different kinds of applications. So I might start out with like the out-of-the-box template ASP.NET MVC application. Let's wire in Auth0 authentication. And then maybe the next week we do, here's a Node Express application. Let's wire in Auth0 authentication. And then maybe even do like a mobile client. So maybe an iOS application, wire in authentication. And then, you know, that series might not be 2 hours like we've done here. They might just be little half-hour mini episodes, but I could just keep adding in, like introducing features of what Auth0 does. So that would be one series. Another series that I've been thinking about is that in the time that I've been on Twitch, I've noticed that there are a lot of game developer streams that young, excited gamers are watching them and trying to learn how to do game development, but they're starting with like Unity, right? And some of these gamers really need to start with, how do I program? How do I get started with programming? And so I was thinking of like a beginner series for .NET, because it's the language I'm most familiar with. C# anyway, the language that I'm most familiar with. And starting like bare bones, like here's how you install a development environment. Here's how you create a project. Here's how you create a console application. Here's how you do loops. These are what variables are. You know, things like that. So those are kind of, I'd like to have an hour-long stream every day of the work week but kind of break it up in like, you know, maybe 2 days I work on Broxburn, 2 days I work on my beginner series, beginning programming series, and then 1 day I spend doing like, hey, let me show you something cool about Auth0. What do you guys think about that idea? Okay, Brave Cobra says an Auth0 series would be awesome. I appreciate that. And so I will get that on the schedule. And we'll just start very, very basic, right? Dev Chatter did a series on beginning programming with C#. Yeah, okay. What if we did one in Node instead? We started out with JavaScript. That might be interesting. I've been interested in learning Swift. I could do like a beginning. It would be interesting to do, you know, this is the basics of programming, but I'm learning a new language at the same time. That might be interesting to watch. Yeah, definitely. I would schedule them in as events specific to the series to where you guys knew which episodes were available. Thanks, Lion and Bear. Well, I don't really have anything else to show. You guys don't really have any more questions, do you? I think I need to sign off for the night and go be with my family. Because my dog's out there and I know he needs to go outside. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I appreciate you all being here. And I will be back sometime around Monday. And I'm trying to hit the 4 o'clock PST. Like, that's my regular scheduled time. All right? Cool. Thanks, everybody. I will see you next time.